Happy Wednesday. Valerie Hunt, Run RX, Ask Me Anything. So every Wednesday I come on live and I answer questions that people have asked during the week about their running. And generally it's about some kind of running injury or about, something in general about, I get a lot about running shoes, I get a lot about race training, but most of all, because my thing is Run RX, Run Pain Free, most of the questions that I get are injury related. And then the fun part for me, just so you know, I've been coaching running, specifically running now for 22 years. I've been a trainer for 31, and one of the things that never changes in what I teach, whether it's whatever movement I'm teaching, the whole point of teaching people how to move is to move well. So because when you move well, you can keep moving. I mean, it's really that simple. And running is another movement. And the more we can think about running as a movement, then you can start thinking about the way you move. And that's a big challenge right now in running, because for most of us, going for a run is more about our distance, right? How far am I running today? Where am I running today? What shoes am I wearing today, right? Very few times have you called your friend to go for a run and tagged them or whatever, send a text, hey, let's learn how to run today. So when I very first, by the way, started teaching people running as a movement, I didn't realize that people didn't do that, because I didn't come from a background of running. I had come from a background of group fitness and weight room. I'm a personal trainer. I started running in college. So, but and I'm a kinesiology major, and they didn't teach the movement of running either. And so when I was like, okay, I'm going to teach running, people were like, you don't teach running, you just run. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did. I just ran, and I got just right injured. I'd never heard of plantar fasciitis, and by then I'd been teaching aerobics for over 10 years, and I was doing all kinds of bouncing and crazy movements in the weight room and inside. How come they didn't hurt? And then I'd go out running, so everyone's like, oh, it's your shoes. You're wearing the wrong shoes. And then it became, wait, it's the surface. You're running on the wrong surface. Well, no, it's not. I wasn't even running. I was moving my body, but I certainly wouldn't call it running. And that's kind of what a lot of us do. Like, we go out and we make up our own movement. For all of us, like, running could be whatever it is for you, right? And then when someone says, well, why do you like running? Like, what is it about running that you like? Most people, for when I ask people, why do you run? They're like, because it's to relieve stress, to be with my friends, my personal time, it brings joy in my life. Like, we have so much emotion with it, with just the act of running. And honestly, the reason is because running, as people, that's the best connection we have with nature, with being out, that's reality. Like, when you're outside and you're moving and you're running, it is moving as nature intended. That is what running is. Isn't that cool? And we all have a natural blueprint for running. Every one of us can fall and use gravity. Every one of us can pull our foot up. So once we all start to work with movement in our running, my running is a completely different experience, right? And then you can call your friend and say, hey, you want to go free falling instead of pounding on the pavement? Okay, great. Well, not great, Brian. Thank you for asking a question. Okay, so Brian says, I am trying to implement the technique, but I'm still getting medial shin splints. This foot tends to overpronate. Do you have any advice? Okay. Yes, of course I have advice. I'm just teasing, but not really. Okay, so this is a great question, because one, for me, I'm hearing he's getting a shin splint. He thinks it's because he's overpronating. So let me tell you the good news. Okay, the good news is we all pronate. We all pronate, we all supinate, we all dorsiflex. Hopefully the ankle is actually allowed to do what it's supposed to do. Isn't that cool to know? So don't let the shoe people scare you with those kinds of words, okay? And the reason I say that is because what's so nice about your ankle is if you allow your ankle to move in a full rotation when you're not running, meaning add in some, and I'm going to show you, some ankle circles or whatnot, then during your run, we want to have what's called a floppy ankle, all right? And a floppy ankle means that my foot touches down on the ground, I pull it, and in the air it's relaxed. That's a floppy ankle. I'm not doing anything, it's completely relaxed. Then once it touches down, then I do work. Only once the body weight is on the ground do I do any work. When the foot's in the air, why should I do anything? Gravity does that. So if there's a shin splint, let's go with shin splints first, because they're awful, right? So a shin splint, which by the way, if you've never had one, yes, good for you. I've had thousands, not anymore, but I used to. So a shin splint is any pain in the front. Usually it's in the front, it could be in the side, but basically it's the front of the leg pain. It can be in the where your shoelace is to the base of the knee, anywhere around there. People just say I have a shin splint. So what happens is when you're running, right before the foot touches, okay, it's not even, if my foot's relaxed, my foot will drop down like this, like a foot. The faster you run, guys, this is important. If I'm sprinting or really running fast, the foot's going to come down even more floppy because it had more time to come up. So usually ground contact should be ball of foot, then the rest of the foot, then your body falls, your foot unweighs, and look, it comes off the same. You see your foot will unweigh and then pull off. Pull. That's the key, okay? So the key is, if I'm having a shin splint, it's because instead of letting my ankle relax in the air, I am still looking for the ground. So it could be where you're like, okay, I'm thinking about, let's say, and you said hopping, there's no hopping. Hopping is only in place. Great thing to say though, because if he's thinking hopping, then he might be doing this. And then you see the foot's going to come down hard, okay? Hopping is only in place because in place we can only go up and down. We could go side to side, but ideally the only direction I can really go in place is up and down, which is why the ball of foot hop is so important, because I'm learning that when my foot hits the ground, I want it to just pop up. Okay, so first we have to switch our thought. We're not hopping during the run, we're pulling the foot. But we use hops to train ourselves for elasticity. All right, so if I'm running and I have a shin splint, it means when let's say I pulled my foot up, but then instead of just letting it go, I put tension, usually from the hip forward. The foot will hit like this, and then here. And this slap is really hard on the shin because it's like slap. You see? Slap. Instead of the foot dropping and rebounding up, even if you're thinking of pulling but you still reach the foot, thud. Okay? So if I'm running and I don't feel a very nice rebound off the ground, then yes, you're either trying to hop or there's still some reaching. So what's the answer? Here's the best part. The answer is the same if it's a shin splint or plantar fasciitis or IT band pain or any of these very common running injuries. Like mine was always either shin splints or somewhere back in here. I had a bunch of hamstring stuff. Because when I first started trying to run this method, it's called pose, I didn't know what I was doing either, so I was running like this. And then, I'm not kidding. And what happens then, I over pulled, so then because my foot was so far back, everything has a consequence. So I'm not thinking about reaching, right? I'm thinking pull, pull. But watch my foot. I just pulled it. I'm going to pull this foot. Watch what the other one does. You see? It reached. So even if you're not thinking about it, you're not balanced in your movement. That's why you have the shin splint. So here's the best part. Because someone else said I have calf pain, which was going to be my discussion. So we're going to do calf pain, shin splint, whatever the pain is. There's an imbalance in the movement. So all I have to do is balance. So how do I balance? Well, I stand in the running pose. The pose itself is optimal balance for running. Isn't that cool? So in the running pose, I'm in balance. When I'm on the ground, I only want to be in this pose. That's it. I want to be right here. I want to fall forward, connected as one unit, and I want to pull my foot. Then I'm back in pose, and I can continue the cycle, because the gait cycle is pose, fall, pull. And so what happens as I continue is, of course, I'm able to keep falling and pulling, and that's how you continue. So if I'm repeating the same cycle over and over and over, I'm going to be more likely to move correctly and make less movement errors. And the less movement errors that I make, then guess what? My tissues are working together, my muscles are working together, everything starts to heal, and then you prevent it from coming back. That's what I'm telling you. It's so amazing. It's instead of thinking, I need to stop reaching, or I need to stop, pushing, or I don't need to stop doing anything. I only need to practice what to do. And the first step is this balance. When you're on the ground, it's called a shaky balance. Because do I want to stay on the ground? No, right? As soon as I sense that I'm on the ground, I want to get off it. But first I want to feel, what should it feel like when I'm on the ground? Because I can only control what happens on the ground, and I have to then let go so the air part can happen. So this is a really important conversation, because here I am in my pose. What happens next? Falling before the pull. So then you can start to connect with, okay, this is pretty cool. So as what she's saying is, as my body falls forward, if I simply pull, there I am right back in pose. I didn't have to think about where I put my other foot. That's what we're letting go of. That's what letting go is all about. When I tell people you pull, then you release, then you pull the other foot. So running simply becomes the act of pulling, but as your body falls forward. So then you fall and you're up, 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 because you're pulling the direction up. You're pulling the foot up. See? My foot is pulling up. And if that's my to-do, I'm always simply pulling. Everything else goes away because you're not thinking about it. Isn't that cool? Because if I try to think of things like, don't reach, I don't know, then I'm going to be like, okay, don't reach. Well, then what am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. You see what I mean? So then I'm like, okay, I'm not reaching. Only think of the to-do. And it starts to go, everything else goes out the window. Now, let me just say this. If you land, we were talking about the pronation. If I was running towards you and my foot landed like this out in front of me, that's a problem. But it also means you have a tension in the ankle and you're looking for the ground. So again, the way to let go of that is I'm never looking for the ground. When I sense the ground, then I pull, right? Because when you're running, you're going to sense, like I'm not looking, I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at the ground. So I can feel, you see, when I feel that my foot's on the ground, I simply pull it. It's really cool. And then you start to go, okay, I'm not going anywhere, I feel really choppy. That's why you have to remember that there's 3 elements. So practicing this also makes you a lot stronger, by the way. And then you've got a free fall. Wee-hoo! And immediately pull. Because the fun part of free falling is that's your acceleration, that's your speed, that's your go. And if my body's ahead, then my foot will not get ahead of me, right? I mean, it starts to become a lot of fun that way, but you've got to put that fall element in. Okay, I tend to think of my hamstring pulling up, nothing else, except that, John, your hamstring isn't connected to the ground, and your foot is. So just, and this is really cool, though. So he said, I think about my hamstring. So the challenge becomes then, if I'm thinking about my hamstring, I just want to make sure you're not trying to feel the hamstring. So just kind of think about that. We love to talk about muscles, and so the funny part is, and I was a big, I challenged this for a long time, both in my thinking, and also I challenged Dr. Romanoff. He's the creator of Pose Method. He's my coach. 18 years, and he still would say she needs 18 more years. The physics behind running is a lot of fun, But I was the same way and that's why I looked like I did. I was so caught up in pulling with my hamstring that I really did spend at least a year or two like sitting in a chair and I was pulling. I really was pulling. And woo-wee, my hamstrings were tired. We want to do that when we practice so we can really dial into what's my hamstring, what is the pull, am I pulling correctly? So that's why the drills are so amazing, and I really think that they need to be part of your practice. Then we work on the feeling and the perception and all of that. When you're running, you only use 10% active hamstring. So we have to be very careful because 10% is not a lot, right? So if I'm running, if I have too much thinking of hamstring, I may start to over pull. So just be careful when you're running, that the running itself, think of something like a very quick directive. Pull up, because then you're telling your foot what you want it to do, and let the hamstring finish the pull on its own. And we don't talk about reflexive responses of muscles very much. Everybody's so into like, and hold the muscle. But if I was doing a bicep curl, it would make sense to put the weight here and do the whole curl, right? It's bicep curl. If you go to the doctor and they test your reflex, they do this. Your arm, they're like, relax, relax, relax. Then they hit your arm. You see what happens? And if I hit it harder, you see my arm will go higher. But I didn't, right? They used to do that with your knee, remember? Reflex. No one tests the hamstring reflex, so you didn't even know you had one. I had a physical therapist say to me, I didn't know the hamstring had a reflex. Now you do. But it's very hard. It doesn't make as much sense as like this is simple. So hamstring reflex is the same. Foot has to be relaxed. Feel it. That's the hamstring reflex, okay? So when you're running, the height of the pull is dependent on your fall. So if I just fall a little bit, like here I am in pose, I'm just gonna fall a little bit and pull. See how my foot didn't pull very high? Because my hamstring is really smart, smarter than me. So if I fall more, pulls higher. If I was really running, you see, without changing any effort of what I did, I simply pulled the foot, that's it. So guys, have fun with that practice, because the more I think it, if I just do a few really good, really aggressive hamstring pulls in my practice, then when I run, it's so much easier to simply pull the foot. But I promise your foot will pull higher. It just happens, right? Just like the relaxing of the ankle. Can only happen if I do ankle mobility. Because if I never stretch or do any mobility or self-care, I can't just expect my ankle to be relaxed. So if you, we have a really simple 30-day reboot on YouTube, and it has skill, strength, and self-care. I really like it because it gets you started. It talks about the pose, the fall, the pull, all three elements of the running, and then it gives you skill drills to practice to get you better, right? To develop your elasticity, to help you to hold your line, to help you with perception. But the more you just think about the simplicity of it, and then it's got the stretches, a little bit of strength stuff. So it all goes together. So if someone told me I pronated, I would just say thank you. But if they were like, your foot's landing out ahead of you in your run, then, okay, I need to work on my fall pull. Thanks. See what I mean? Don't make it hard for yourself. You just need to work on the drill. And it's not crazy. Like, it's 5 minutes of your time, but it's like taking the time to be like, okay, here's a wall. I'm going to practice falling. I'm going to practice being in my pose. I'm going to practice the fall pull. And you do a few minutes of practice before you go running. All of a sudden, you're changing what you think about in your run. Okay. But by the way, what is the best way? I wanted to answer John. But John, I do like that you are thinking about the running and using your hamstrings. So that is really, really good. Okay, Jill, what is the best way to make sure you are running with pose? Do not use slow motion video. So that's a great question. Let me answer that, and then I saw one more, and then I'll do the shoes. Okay, so she asked me, what's the best way to really know you're doing the pose? Well, the best way is to send me your running. Let me do your gait analysis. And by the way, of course, let me pitch that really quickly. I do have a 12-week membership where that is all I do is watch you. You watch me, of course, but I watch you. You send in for 12 weeks. your running, your drills, your check-ins. It's so good. If you are gonna film yourself, please don't do it in slow motion. And let me tell you why. It's a great question though, okay? Slow motion, as nice as it is not gonna show you your fall. And we really need you to see in your own run that in this moment you're in pose, in the next moment are you falling and pulling, and it's one frame. So everybody's film's the same. So just film yourself. I use an app called Coach's Eye, which is the best that I found. You guys welcome to comment, because my app is like 10 years old. I'm sure there's newer stuff, but you can get it for free, and you just put your video in it, and it'll show you frame by frame. That is the way to see it. Slow motion is fun, visually nice, but educationally wise not gonna help you. So film in regular speed, and then put it in Coach's Eye, or just slow it down. But ideally, let me see it. It's hard to analyze yourself. Okay, and the last question is about the shoes. So, and by the way, real quick with the gait analysis, ideally, as soon as you're on the ground, are you in pose? That's what you're looking for. Are you holding to fall? And then pulling the foot. But remember, in running, there will be, hopefully, at some point, your legs are separated. Just keep that in mind. There should be a frame, hopefully more than one, where you're in the air. Both feet, for running to actually happen, there needs to be both feet in flight. So look for that. Are you getting both feet in the air? And if you're not, then you can say to yourself, all right, self, I gotta work on my fall pull. And when you practice in place, it needs to feel very quick, so that when you're running, it just gets you a nice rhythm, all right? Last thing was with the shoes. Yes, I like minimalist shoes. And let me, just say this. It's like when I was just talking about the connection with the foot to the ground, to my head, the more space, the more layers of cushion you put in between, then you miss out on some of the communication. So if you have too much cushion, your brain doesn't really know where you are. So it's always like you're running on, water. It's like you're never fully stable. So one of the things people love to do is like run out on different elements, like sand or grass, or even trail running, right? Tracks even, a little bit more cushion. So different elements of running are great. They're going to help you strengthen your feet. They develop proprioception, all of that good stuff. But the strongest you will get is being on a stable support. I stand on this mat just because it's purple on the ground. So when I practice these drills, like standing in pose, hopping, be on a stable support. Less waving around, the better. Think about like ballet dancers. We don't want to be on point, or yoga practitioners, right? When they practice their skill in place, right? They are either barefoot or in a minimalist shoe on a nice wood floor. I just have a stall mats, but they work. So think about that for your practice. When you go out running, you need enough cushion to feel the rebound from the ground, and to feel that you've got support and you're not going to hit a rock, or it's really hot outside or something and I'm going to hurt my foot. So I really think you need some cushion. I don't wear fully barefoot shoes. I think these are 4 millimeter, and that works for me, because with this I can feel a nice rebound. If I go like full barefoot, I don't feel it. So that's too minimalist for me. I found a nice middle ground. Most of my runners like the one step up with the ultras. So make sure that when you have your shoe on, you still feel like you can stand stable, but you should feel like you can get a little bounce out of the shoe, right? Even though we're not bouncing in our run, right? But we're rebounding, and in order to rebound, I've got to be able to, I need that triple force of gravity, ground reaction force, and muscle elasticity. And only 10% of my hamstring for that to happen. So you got to have enough cushion to get a little bit of feedback off the ground, but not so much that the foot's, wonky. All right, so Jill, I hope that helped. I do want you guys to take advantage, and of course I'm gonna pitch my membership, but also film yourself. Absolutely, I film myself lifting all the time. I like to see movement and make sure the movement looks correctly. Look at things like, are my ears, shoulders, hips in line? Most people have no idea what pose is, so they don't even look in to see what their pose looks like, right? When we look at our race pictures, by the way, we get our pictures back, I'm looking for like, if I'm smiling, everything looks good, right? So when we film ourselves and we're watching the film, first of all, it really is hard to watch yourself. It just is, because you're looking at different things. But start to look first. Can you find this pose in your gait cycle? What does your pose look like? A lot of people, when I see their first run, their pose doesn't look like this. Their pose looks like this, or maybe they're here, or maybe they're here. And then that affects everything. My shoulders are behind, my foot's going forward. My shoulders are in front, my foot's going back. I mean, it's all connected. So make sure if you do your own video, look at all three elements. Look at the pose, look at the fall, and then look at the pull, all right? Make sure that those knees are staying nice and bent. Guys, go through that 30-day reboot. It's really nice to have that skill, strength, and self-care. There's no magic. You just had to put the work in. It's just the consistency of the practice, especially falling, because falling is not a movement. Falling is just something you allow. So like I tell people, if you're standing up at any point and there's a wall near you, fall. The better I get at falling, the better I get at running. I'm telling you, then when you want to run with your friends, you're like, let's go running. Let's fall. It's so much more fun. All right, you can definitely post more questions here. I'll answer them next week. You can also email me, and I'm happy to answer questions on email. Just email team@runrx.fit, support@runrx.fit. We do also have a free quiz on the website, so if you've got like a little twinge that won't go away, I keep getting the same IT band or whatever, shin splint, take the quiz. It helps you to see what the difference is between, you know, the gait cycle of pulling, and maybe you're doing something different. But either way, guys, have a great run, and thanks for keeping the questions coming. Have a great day.